Hello there. Welcome to episode 48 of Bow and Blade, a podcast brought to you by medievalists.net, your home for all things medieval on the internet. Bow and Blade gives you a seat at the bar as scholars of medieval warfare go beyond the Wikipedia articles to talk about the debates and the questions that we're working on today. I'm Michael Livingston, Distinguished Professor at the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina.
And I'm Kelly DeVries, Professor of History at Loyola University and Distinguished Visiting Professor at the Air Force Academy. Mike, 48.
48.
We're almost at a half century. I can't believe it.
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun.
I know.
Time flies when you're having fun, or when you're not having fun, as many of the losers experience in the battles that we talk about.
Yes. We always have somebody on this show that loses.
Yeah.
And always hope that it's not me or you.
Yeah.
Usually it's
Yeah.
it's a Q&A on the 50th. So we're going to celebrate. Guys out there in the podcast world, we need some good questions. Give us some stumpers. Something we don't know, like what the third button is on the fourth piece of metal the Black Prince is in, or something.
Yeah, give us some good ones for number 50. I've got a handful that we hadn't answered so far, but since I'm in, and I should say too, we not only do we get these kind of cool questions from folks, we also get great fan mail. That's always incredibly sweet and nice.
Yep.
I had a student texted me yesterday. It was like, I listened to your podcast. I'm like, wow, you graduated like 15 years ago, man. That's awesome. And we're also getting interesting, just people will send us articles and research and things. So yeah.
It is. And you know what? I mean, Mike and I were talking about this a little bit a couple of days ago. There's some young, bright scholars out there. There's some really good stuff. I think that a podcast, in about 10 years' time is going to be very different. There's going to be so many new battles that we know more about in places like Iberia and Greece and other things. Things like you and Mike did with Thermopylae. Almost every review I've read has said, "Who knew? Who knew there was more than one battle up there?"
Yeah. Apparently, I don't really read reviews, but apparently some of the reviews are annoyed that we don't give a lot of detail on some of the battles. It's like, yeah, it's one line in a chronicle. What do you want us to do here? Make it up?
Hey, you've got details on the battles that matter. I mean, yes, we're always hampered by the lack of space we have, lack of resource we have.
Yeah.
The one big battle Thermopylae has perhaps too much, but it's all from one side. We have no clue what the Persians are thinking. But the last battle you did, I mean, I don't think they know this, but Mike and Mike wrote the Killing Ground, the battles of Thermopylae. They did the final battle in there is World War II, and it was featured in Smithsonian Magazine.
Yeah. That was cool. Yeah. Obviously last episode we talked about the book with Mike as a guest. And Smithsonian ran an excerpt of the final chapter. That was fun. I think it's my first time being published in Smithsonian. So
well, I've never had it happen. So congratulations.
That's
to
fun.
You on that.
That's fun.
It is fun.
I don't want people to think I'm being flippant or something, but I mean, that's kind of how I react to things like that. Like, that's fun. Look at that. I read that magazine as a kid.
Yeah. I mean, my mom read it. That's what, she said, "Oh, I know this Mike Livingston." I said, "Is this the same one?" I said, "Yeah, it is.
It's the same one. It's the same one. It's the same
fella."
fella.
Been taking Smithsonian forever. But I mean, it's just I think it's great because it'll let people know that that there are really good things being done out there in history and throughout the whole period, but medieval military history especially. And I feel sometimes we're the very pinnacle of an iceberg that's huge underneath us.
Oh yeah, I mean, so many good scholars out there, and yeah. I mean, the next generation coming up is going to be really incredible. Can't wait to see what they do and how they tear our stuff apart.
Well, that is kind of funny. I mean, in fact, looking at the stuff on Halidon Hill today, I went to the Wikipedia page, and it has me listed as a source in several different places. And that was my first book. My first book was, well, I guess it's my second book, but Infantry Warfare in the 14th Century. And I did a chapter on Halidon Hill, and fun to see it even now. I was a younger pup then. I know that that was a long way ago. So our listeners, it was before they were born, as my daughter referred to it, the last century.
Yeah, it's insane to look back and you're like, wow, that was I was talking about my students about a movie today, and I was like, so that was 40 years ago. Oh God. Like, oh God. Because thinking about movies that were 40 years old when I was their age, and I'm like, okay, Grandpa. Oh crap, that's me.
No, that's it. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man.
The
Oh
cadet.
man.
We're both
Uh
teaching cadets nowadays, and the cadets are. I love teaching cadets. They really are sponges out here at the Air Force Academy. They want to know, and I did read the comment of one student after talking about Valerian being captured by Shapper and having Shapper carve it on the wall and
yeah,
using them as a step stool. And the comment, I thought it was priceless. The comment was, "Oh, now that'd be embarrassing."
embarrassing. Oh, cadets. Oh, cadets. Uh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so
Well,
as Kelly just indicated, we're gonna do Halton Hill today.
Howland Hill, yeah.
Halton
Yeah, and
Hill.
speaking about that iceberg, you're gonna chip off a piece of ice for something to drink.
I mean, my God, we're winning Rome, winning Scotland. Um, I gotta tell you what I'm drinking tonight. Uh, is and look, I am not a I'm not a wealthy man,
Not
to
a
say
wealthy
the
man.
least, to say the
Yes.
least. A few years ago, I bought there was this really good deal. I shouldn't say that I got a good deal on it because it was going to be a gift. I bought a really nice bottle of scotch as a gift for Bernard Cornwell.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I've told this story yet,
No, you have
um,
not.
but anyway, I bought this nice bottle of scotch. It's a Glenfiddich Grand Cru. It's a 23-year old scotch. Um, and I bought this to give to Bernard next time I saw him because Never Greater Slaughter had just come out and he'd said nice things. I was like, oh, I owe him. So I did that, and then like somehow we every time we saw each other, I didn't have the scotch, and it just didn't work out. And then last time I saw him, he was like, Mike, just drink the scotch, man. Just drink the scotch. And right now I'm remodeling, putting in a little additional room on my house for to have a home office for the first time in my life. And yeah, in the course of doing that, my dad was here, and Mike Cole, we had on last time that did Killing Ground with me, came down to lend a hammer for a few days. It was really, really sweet. And I was like, you know what? We're popping this sucker. And so I'm having some of this Grand Cru. It's the best scotch I've ever had in my life. It's so good.
Okay.
So
All
good.
right.
There you go,
I'm
people.
not
That's what
going to
I'm
top
having.
that.
That's what
I'm
I'm
not
having.
going to top that. I think that's probably top run of the bar that we're sitting at right now. It's maybe I ought to look a little lower, but cheaper to go with it. I'll just go with the straight doers, you know.
Straight doers. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, Scots did better. I think it probably ratcheted up a bit, a little bit more expense. But let's face it, the Scots really don't do the best.
this is a
At
bad one. This is not the only bad one we've done where the Scots really got it handed to them.
No, no, but it's not a loss. Like every once in a while, I'm thinking, oh, geez, losses, and I'm preparing a class or something. I'm thinking about losses, and I think, oh yeah, that may have been the Liégeois at Ote that we did. They just
Episode 32, everybody. Episode 32.
episode 32. Yeah, the poor Liégeois. It's a great battle. It's a great battle to study. It's very one-sided, and John the Fearless, who wins, writes a letter like and it reeks all the way through. What the hell did they do now? Why? He couldn't
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah, but we've
So
done,
this
I mean, we've done a lot of Scott. We did Falkirk, episode 26.
Falkirk, yeah, yeah.
That didn't go well.
No,
Um,
we've done Bannockburn.
yeah, we did Bannockburn. That
That
was
went better for the
episode
Scot.
41. That was episode
Yeah,
41. So we've done some Scots things. Here we are again. I don't think
yeah.
have we done
The same century. It's not just down the road. 1333 is not that far from 1314.
it isn't that far away. Yeah, yeah. We haven't done Stirling Bridge, I don't think. Not actual Stirling Bridge. We talked about Stirling a lot, I think, but I don't think we've done Stirling Bridge. Have we?
Nah, you got the list. We may have done Sterling Bridge a long time ago, but we did Falkirk for definitely. We're talking about William Wallace, so
I don't think we've done Stirling Bridge. We're probably gonna have to do Stirling
probably
Bridge.
should. Yeah, yeah. Go
Um,
back there.
yeah.
Suffice to say, out there in the podcast land, the Scots and the English are fighting a lot between the end of the 13th and the beginning of the 14th century. This is but another one.
Here we go
We'll have
again.
to come back, do Neville's Cross. I don't think we've done that. That's the next one down on the line. I think the best can be said is the Scots and the English don't like each other at this period of time, if it ever. But at this period of time, they sure did, and
Yeah, I
they
mean, if ever, right? Yeah, as you said,
yeah.
they
Yeah.
I think a lot of folks today would still say we're not big fans. Yeah,
No.
I'm actually literally just adding onto our list. There we go. Stirling Bridge.
Some more
Bingo bango.
Scottish ones. You never
Um,
fault it when you have a Scottish one.
yeah, yeah, no, it's good stuff. But yeah, this is July 19th, 1333.
Yep. No.
Uh
Edward the Third
Edward
back in
III.
England.
Yeah. Eddie three. Um
It's
this
really his first engagement against the Scots, first personal engagements against the Scots. So even though we've had this other, this all these build-ups, including Duplin Moor, which is the English favored rebels against the Scottish.
right. I mean, he'd been there at Weardale campaign.
Yes.
But of course, kind of don't really get a fight there, which is why that's
No,
fascinating.
it is fascinating.
We need God,
Add that to the list too.
yeah, damn it. All right, so we gotta do that too. But yeah, this is like, yeah, field command. And it is a pitched battle. And that's kind of probably where we should start, I suppose.
Yeah, either that or start with the depth. Edward III deposes his father in 1327. I think that's probably got to be said. Just
Yeah.
how is Edward II out of the picture? Well, Edward III deposes him. He's been ineffective, lost at Bannockburn. He does win against the rebellion that Lancaster throws against him in 1328, but uh, or not. But now Edward really overthrows Dad and says, "Okay, I'm going to be king." At about the same time, the English lose their king. And so now Edward has the potential of being two kings, both French and the English. So that sets the stage. It takes him a few years. He has to have his kingdom behind him. And then he chooses, and this is an interesting question. Why do you think he chooses the Scots over the French as his first combat tour?
Well, I mean, for one thing, this is cheaper. It's a lot easier to march than to sail somewhere. I think that there's kind of a bigger, picture of the ongoing fight with France. But at this point, Balliol, he'd gotten him onto the throne. But Balliol has been knocked off his perch, right? And so and part of that believed to be with French backing, right? We've got to shut the door in the north, before we can go back and try and conclude things in across the sea. I just don't think you can't leave an enemy in your backfield, and this is
No.
something that obviously we've talked about, I think, before. even in course of battles, right? You don't want people in your backfield. That's bad. This is the reason you can't just, well, I don't want to take that castle. I'll just march past it. No, 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 because now
No,
there's a castle in your
yeah,
backfield. You can't do
there's
that.
a catch. Yeah,
So I think there's a degree to which this is what's happening here too, is that, he needs to and thinks he can fairly quickly wrap it up.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
he
I
really
mean,
thinks this will do it.
his priorities are there. There's no question. I mean, even just not leaving somebody in the in the backfield. The Scots, when he takes over in 1327 from his father, and he's looking now at the next phase. He's still quite young. I mean, he's 14 in 1327. So he looks at the next phase, and the next phase is not yet France. The next phase is definitely Scotland. It is until 1328 that the French suddenly find nobody on the throne that is descended from Philip IV. And that's when we get an inkling that Edward III is displeased and would like to be king of France, certainly pushed by his mother, but can't leave the Scots alone. And it seems to have been his first goal. I kind of play what if sometimes with the students. What if the French had not run out of arrows?
Yeah.
Does Edward go to France, or does he just simply go further and more north into Scotland? Because Halidon Hill's on the border.
Yeah, well, this is all centered on Berwick.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other piece of this puzzle is that Berwick today, I don't know that people think about Berwick-upon-Tweed as this extraordinary place. But in the 14th century, this is a big deal. Berwick is a very big deal. This is the economic port of entry for Scotland, literal port. But a lot of money goes through there. And if you can hold it and take it, that's not only kind of, you have strategic reasons why you want to hold Berwick, but also there's like strong economic reasons to hold Berwick. And I mean, both sides know this. And the Scots are holding it when Edward says, well, I'm just gonna go take it. Uh, I'm gonna go lay siege to that place and take it. But Berwick, you can just, Berwick just bounces back and forth between the two sides. Most through the wars of Scottish independence.
It was Edward's grandfather, so Edward I, that had burned Berwick to the ground out of uh, well, just because they had done something he disliked. There's the It was not a pleasant experience for the Berwickers, but it was certainly not. It certainly gives you an indication of the importance that both sides lay on Berwick. I mean, it was he claims that they were negotiating with the Scots, which they probably were, and so that's why Edward went up there to be the ruthless king that he was. So yeah, it's been there for many years and is now in the hands of the Scots.
Yeah. And again, even though Berwick isn't a huge place today, I mean it's beautiful, but it's not hadn't like Edinburgh. It doesn't have that sort of reputation. You can just look at satellite images of Berwick, and you can see that the military importance of it continued forward.
It
There's
did.
there are
It did.
fortifications there that are not medieval.
No, they're very much Elizabethan, and it's fun to walk around them because it does give you an idea that Elizabeth's notion was these big, Tres Italian type fortifications that went outside the city and all around it. Here we have with Edward III simply a walled city with a big castle at one end, a big castle that faces out toward the sea, but is also very or out towards, I guess, the river more than the sea. And but then there and a hill with a hill next to it, which shall come into our talk somewhat today, our discussion somewhat today, because the hill is called Halidon.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where the spot.
So yeah, the Scots have this in their possession. Um, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think I'm fair in saying that up to this point, the Scots have very rarely engaged in a pitched battle. And when they did, it usually didn't go very well in their favor. This is just something they kind of generally didn't do. And in fact, we mentioned it. We'll have to do an episode on it. The Weardale campaign. They don't engage in a pitched battle there. So you have this expectation the English want is let's do this. Let's have the big fight. And the Scots keep kind of denying it.
And
Do
that
you?
I think is the most important thing, Mike. I think that it's the Scots not wanting to go to battle because everybody looks at the early 14th century and they see the two battles, well, the big battle, Bannockburn, and then Loudon Hill before it, that Robert Bruce is fighting battles. But this is not the case. The Scots have avoided battle. They avoided battle in the Weardale campaign. They only fight with William Wallace at battles that they think they can win. Stirling Bridge, they can very easily win. That's got to be the stupidest English battle that was fought. Although Stirling although Falkirk turns out not to be the easy victory they thought it would be. Those are the number of battles we could really talk about in entire almost the entire Scottish history, going back to Macbeth, pretty much.
Yeah, it is this. I mean, look, they're smart. If you can win a victory without doing a big pitch battle, just do it, right? I mean, this preoccupation we have with battles. I mean, here we're talking on a battle podcast, but it's kind of silly. What your preoccupation as a military commander is to win, and whatever form that looks, that's what you're going to try and do. Um, do you think that it is actually present in Edward the Third's mind, um, that I will besiege Berwick? And having done so, I will bring the Scots to bear, that they will come and fight me if I besiege. You think he really is thinking that?
I I think that's it. I mean, I think that this is where Edward coming in fresh, not having really faced the Scots except on the Weardale campaign, never really facing them, and even coming out of the Weardale campaign, uh, I think he's saying I've got to defeat the Scots, and I can't keep chasing after them like Mortimer and he did in Weardale. I because they're faster. They know the countryside. They know everything, and so he says, "Well, how can I bring them to battle?" And the easiest way, in his mind, at least it works. So as he goes and besieges the castle of the port that is very important for the Scots in the north, Berwick-upon-Tweed.
And it's a location he can, that is, say, Edward can reasonably get to fairly easily, right? This is not, as far as Stirling. This is not, kind of as I mean, you're in foreign territory, but it's not as bad as other places you might do this. But it is an extremely important place for the Scots because of this economic importance, and it's kind of some of a traditional place at which that there had been previous fighting over. So there's also kind
Yeah.
of a history overlaid here of this being an important location and something that we fight over. Again, kind of much as we were talking about, I think in the last episode with Thermopylae, right? That each battle kind of makes it more likely there's going to be another battle there because people will think of it as a battle place. Berwick, I think, had kind of rightly so been thought of in this way.
I think this is something also that when we look at the Scottish Wars, and a lot of people do look at them, especially as the Scots like looking at them. But when we look at them, we've got to recognize that there's a whole bunch of castles right up underneath Berwick. There's a series of castles all up there. Either they're royal or they are royally linked to adherents that are not going to turn against him. So Edward has an out. if he goes to Halidon Hill and everything goes to pieces, he can escape, and he can escape with safety and come back and fight another day. So I think Edward's strategic mind, what we will see develop then throughout the entirety of the Hundred Years' Wars, through battles that we've talked about, like Crecy and Sluis and others, his strategic mind is very much, how do I get out of it if I need to?
Yeah, if possible, right? Now he doesn't actually start the siege. Balliol does. And what they do is, can here I go into map mode. The Tweed sort of bends as it gets to the mouth. And in that bending creates a peninsula, essentially. Not really peninsula, but sort of think about it that way. And that's where Berwick is. That's where the castle is. That's where the town is. And so the idea is, let's cross the river, because and so this is on the north side. I mean, because it's making a bend, it's like the north and east side of the river. Let's get to the north bank, and then we can cut our siege lines across between the river and the sea, essentially, and therefore cut off land, any land approach to Berwick. Meanwhile, let's put our English ships out at sea and cut off the sea approach too, right? And so this will kind of choke it off, which is what is the case when Edward shows up. He finds, all right, the siege lines have already been put in place, Navy's already in place. We're in good shape. I mean, the siege had been going on for a few weeks, 6 weeks, something like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
By the time Edward shows up and takes over, and he's like, yeah, let's just keep rolling with this. Let's just keep doing this. What are the
Yeah.
Scots? How are the Scots responding?
Well, now just to give you some dates. So he's the Scots are there in March 1333, and Edward joins them in July. July 11th is when he hits there. So they had a couple of months, yes, like you said, a couple of months of siege that's going on. Um, I think that Edward is looking at this site now. Well, let me back up one. I've been to the castle a couple times, and I've looked all around it. Bob Wisdom Savage and I have led tours there, and this is a really, really well built castle. I mean, it overlooks the river, but it is on solid ground, so there's no marshes around it that would cause some easy destruction of the castle. And then the solid hill behind it kind of gives land access, very limited land access to the castle. And that's the goal. You have to take the castle, you can't take the city. So I think when Edward goes there and he's got it all planned out, like you say, and he knows that is the sort of sore thumb to be kicking against until the enemy shows up.
Yeah, yeah, and they had cut off water supply. They had checked all the boxes. I mean, Berwick is in bad shape by the time Edward gets there.
Yeah.
They're already really, really hurting, and things are getting desperate. And we've talked about this before. Well, how do sieges end? Well, one of the main ways that they end is through negotiation.
Yes.
You cut a deal and you say, if you're not relieved by this date, we get the place and you leave. Get out. We saw this with Stirling Castle. We saw this, in the lead up to Agincourt, Harfleur. This is a pretty standard thing, and that is in fact what the negotiations that are taking place here as well.
Yes.
Is if nobody relieves you, if the Scots won't relieve you, you're gonna give it all up by a certain day. Now, when the Scots come marching down, it's not the Scots king doesn't come down because he's still a kid.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, Edward's not much more than one.
that's true, but David's really young.
Yeah, David is really young. Yes.
David's a wee bairn. And so it's Archibald Douglas who comes down.
Yeah.
He's in
Yeah.
charge of the Scots, and he's got a sizable army. According to some chronicles, like it's like massive because of
Yeah,
course
I
chroniclers have fun.
I would say it. Bannockburn may be about equal, but otherwise, we're talking about one of the larger armies that Scotland is able to muster, and they're coming, and they come down on. They arrive, in fact, before in the week after the castle surrenders. So it surrenders July 11th. The Scots arrive. The battle's fought on the 19th, and the Scots been there for a couple of days.
Yeah, and they have tried like how are the Scots going to respond to this? Are the Scots going to come directly against Edward, which is what Edward wants? What the Scots first try to do is they try to fight around Edward and to get Edward to pull off himself, right? So they go and attack Bamborough, which is south.
Yeah,
How far is Bamborough from?
no, it's in that group of castles there, Bamborough, uh, Yarmouth, a whole bunch of little castles down there, Jedburgh. And but Bamborough has a holds pretty good importance because evidently Edward's Philip of Hainaut, Edward's queen, is there.
Yeah, he put his wife in Bamborough Castle. It's 20 miles as the crow flies.
Yeah.
20 miles crow flies. So the Scots bypass Berwick and they go and they hit Bamborough. They're like, all right, we'll hit this thing and that'll draw you out because you're gonna come try and rescue your wife. And look, their logic here is quite good. Because this is Edward II, Edward III's dad, had in fact done this very thing when he had besieged Berwick, and the Scots attacked York, where his wife was. Um, Edward II had dropped the siege and gone. So they're like, boom, let's do this again. We'll freak him out about his wife, and he'll break the siege, and we're done. But Edward doesn't. Edward's just like, no, man, my wife can take care of herself down there. Quite smartly, he knows that they can't take Bamborough.
Well, I mean, and Philip of Hainaut, she will prove this later on when she organizes the defense of Durham while the siege of Calais is going on, and then when she goes to Calais, she's the voice to be reckoned with, and she's the obviously the daughter of warriors, daughter of the Duke of Brabant, or Count of Hainaut rather, and she's a powerful lady, and she organizes the defense and doesn't give in. Do you read now? This is one where I'm kind of a little uncertain. I think if I'm reading what all the chronicles are saying, that Edward leaves that the Scots leave a token force outside um, of Berwick, just to kind of keep in check to see if Edward is going to ride down to Berwick with his or down to Bamber with his force. That's how I read it. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
some have
Which
not.
would no, and I think they. I mean, how many are there? We don't know, but yeah, there is a token force there that is going to act as a responsive force, right? You pass along. Is Edward moving? What's he doing? You got to maintain contact there. And also, I think, especially kind of as it turns out, um, they're probably also there. Should Edward move and they have an opening, they can bolt into Berwick and say, as well, we've relieved it. So this is also a way of checking that box, as it were. And that kind of does sort of happen. We haven't gotten there yet, but that sort of does happen, and that's probably where that's coming from.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah,
evidence comes. I was going to say evidence comes in a very odd way from that too, because I've read in the chronicles that towards the second half of the 20th century they found the Scottish camp on Halidon Hill and excavated it, and it showed evidence that they had been there longer than would have been for just a couple of days before the Battle of Halidon Hill. So I'm thinking that may have been the case. That that the Scots are playing the short game as well as the long game.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're smart here. I mean, the actions. Halidon Hill is a neat one to me because you can see quite plainly um, what everybody's thinking,
Yeah.
and none of them are really badly thinking. I mean, the move that Douglas is making here, from what he knows,
Yes.
this is what Edward II did. This will work. Great move, like beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Edward III, of course, is also informed by that same and is like, no, no, I'm not going to play that game. I think my wife's got it just fine because she's formidable as all get out, and so is Bamborough. And so he's like,
Barbaro, yeah.
you can't take Bamborough. Like, go waste your time, whatever. I'm running out the clock here. And so he's doing the right thing. And the end result is like we have to do something here if we're going to actually relieve Berwick, because Berwick has made a deal with Edward and the clock is ticking.
And they traded hostages. So
Yes.
Edward held on to the mayor of the city's son. He's got a number of and they appear to be mostly children that he has, teenagers, adolescents, I guess, that he has. And he does some interesting things um, to provoke a battle at Berwick rather than running after the Scott.
Yeah, yeah, there's this horrible event. I mean, look, medieval warfare is full of horrible things. Really full of horrible things. A group of Scots manages to fight their way in. And so they say, well, we've relieved the town. And Edward is like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. That didn't count. And we have this fascinating kind of back and forth about, what actually counts as relieving the force. And Edward, this whole thing, Edward says, look, you didn't come directly from Scottish soil to relieve the town, so it doesn't count. In other words, you didn't come through me because I'm blocking that route. You kind of went around and crossed the river and managed to get some dudes in. That doesn't count. You have to go through me. And the Scots are like, there's no that. Where was that in the fine print? Like that's not in
Yeah,
there.
yeah, that's it.
So we
You
have this
read
kind of
that in the fine print.
right, like that's not how anything works, Edward. And Edward's like, that's not how anything works, Douglas. So we kind of have this fight, but yeah, in the course of this, um, Edward gets so angry that he thinks this deal has been broken. That yeah, he builds a gallows in sight of the city, and which with the mayor and his wife watching hangs their son,
Yeah, Thomas Seaton.
and then says I'm gonna hang, what is it, like two more each day or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, and the poor kid. I mean, Seaton is only about 12. I mean, he's really quite young, and it's a and there's kind of these unwritten rules that you don't go after kids. But Edward throws that book out of the laws of war, and he says, "Yeah, well, I'm going to do it." And yeah, I can't remember exactly how many he says he's going to execute, but it's demand that the Scots return, and they do. They return from Bamber up to Berwick. Now they're sitting on the Halidon Hill. The poor kid is on the gallows, swinging away dead. And the English, so essentially the way I see it, the English are in possession of the castle, then the English army is in front of it, and then the Scots are up on the hill.
No, the English are on Halidon Hill.
Yeah, I know. I threw that out because that's how I wrote it, and I was immediately questioned about it. I'm not sure about it. The way I read the thing, I think the English are in between, but you go with what
You
others.
think they're on, like
I don't think the whole English army isn't in the castle,
yeah, no, yeah, they're
and
on.
And the way I looked at the sources, now I'm fully willing to be wrong here, but
Uh-huh.
the way I looked at the sources, I had the English army outside of the castle, in between the Scots on the upper end of the hill, and or above them in the hill, and the castle. So in other words, the Scots have got to relieve the castle, have to hit the English army.
Yeah, well that is true. For sure. I totally agree on that bit. But no, they got to be on Halidon Hill because
Yeah, they're on Halidon Hill.
the Scott the English are on Halidon Hill. I mean that we get that pretty clear, I think, in the Chronicles. Chronicle of Melsa, I think, rather explicitly states it.
Yeah,
Um, that the English are on Halidon Hill.
I
Um,
think both armies are.
and it makes sense that the English should be on Halidon Hill. The road passes right there, and so there's no way to get an army through without the English having high ground on them and destroying them. The Scots are, I mean, Halidon Hill is sort of a part of a complex of hills, and there's the next hill northwest of Halidon Hill, which is Gnaw, is probably where the Scots are. And right in between is this, it's high ground but boggy high ground.
Yeah,
And in fact, uh, part of the part of the field carries the name Bog End. Like, oh, that makes
it
sense.
does. It does. Yes.
That makes sense. And so those are the positions. So the Scots would then be, they actually are on, also on high ground, right? But in between these two is this boggy high ground. I know that kind of probably sounds weird to say boggy high ground, but this is Scotland. So that works. Um, and yeah, the Scots have taken that position because they know they can't just march up the slopes of the hill. They need to be kind of near high ground to do this right. And they think the Scots go into this fight thinking like we got this. We have more dudes. We're gonna break them, and there's gonna be literally nowhere for the English to go. Because we're gonna push them off of Halidon Hill, and then where are they gonna go? We're gonna smash them against the walls of the city, uh, and into the river and into the sea. There's no way for the English to escape. That's their thinking here. That's not what happens.
Yeah, no, I think because you could. Well, I've been to the battlefield several times, and you can look down from where the monument is, or where they have the traditional battlefield being fought, and there is some archaeology to suggest this, and you can see the castle, even in its ruined state. You can see the castle, so it is, and I think we're actually closer in this sort of thing than others have accused me of being wrong about where the placement of the forces are. I think the idea is the Scots want the Scots really think they have the position because the English have nowhere to go. Uh, they're cutting off the path that the English would take retreat because they're coming up from the where the English would retreat.
Yeah, well, I mean they've looped around, because they crossed the Tweed quite a ways inland in a march, which is part of their problem when it comes to the battles. They're so bloody tired. They've gone so
Yeah,
so
I think
far,
yeah,
so
that I think
quickly.
is absolute truth. Well, in
Um,
fact, they sit there for a while. The two lines actually sit and face each other for a while because this is the point where the call out champions to go in the middle and fight.
yeah, yeah,
We've got it. I think we have that in our reader, the account of the Scotsman with the big dog.
yep. It's in the reader. I don't have the reader in front of me, so I can't give you all the page number like usual. But yes, Medieval Warfare reader has the story of the Scotsman and his dog,
Yeah,
that happens out there.
and
Uh, Wicked
it's a
stuff.
curious one because we get this kind of sense of Achilles going up against Hector, sort of thing. The two lines sit there. They finally say, "Okay, look, we're going to send out our champion." And I can't remember whose chronicle it is, whether it may have been John Choclo who says, you know, The Englishman went forward. The big Scots and his dog came out. First, the Englishman killed the dog, and then the Scot,
Yeah. Just like boom, boom. You're like, oh, okay. All right.
and then
Um,
that's what draws the two lines to war. So they must have been out there a little bit of time for that to that challenge to be made and to watch the single combat. Uh,
yeah. So the Scots are waiting for high tide.
yeah,
They want to do this at high tide because again they think they've got them trapped, and at high tide, the English won't be able to cross the river. So we'll really have them, right? There's going to be no escape whatsoever. Which again, good thinking, you know.
Douglas is I mean Douglas is a much stronger a much stronger campaigner here than we would give most Scots credit, who are not named Bruce.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Bruce did great. But yeah, he's kind of got it. He seems to have a kind of good thought here. Good processing. A good plan. As they're waiting for the tide to come in, we get these wonderful things going down. But the clock is again, it's ticking because there is, after killing the kid and stuff, there's a new arrangement has been made if the place is not relieved, and that new document is really fun because the new agreement has got such specificity about exactly what the hell it means to relieve the city. We're not going to have any more disagreements about what qualifies. It's very, very specific now about like, well, it's got to be this many people have got to get in. They need to come from this direction. It's all the boxes are there to be checked out, so that we can, we won't have any he said she said about what constitutes relieving Berwick this time. It's going to be known. So we have it, kind of locked in, that countdown for when the battle needs to happen. And Douglas is up against that. He doesn't have a lot of choice here, really. If he wants to keep Berwick with the Scots, he has to fight, and he has to
Yeah,
do it
well,
now.
yeah.
Um, Kind of again, you said it's hard to do these, counterfactual sort of things. It's real easy to say that Douglas should have just pulled back and waited, until he had a better situation because, what could the English do with Berwick if they can't go anywhere, if the Scots army is right there?
And you run out of people to hang after a while. Uh,
Yeah, I mean that's really easy armchair quarterbacking, right? To kind of be like,
yeah,
oh well,
yeah.
should just pull back and waited. But the hard to do when this is happening. Hard to do when the people in the city are suffering. Hard to do when the as of this date, the English position is that much stronger. We have got to do something. We've got to do it now. And so they try.
And I get the feeling that there is some time here that people are maneuvering and everything else, mostly because the chronicles fill with this try to build anticipation or something with a whole bunch of these different speeches. It's like Edward goes on and Douglas goes on to their troops and everything. And yeah, well, okay, guys, you can see both sides saying, yeah, maybe we ought to go down to fighting because it isn't. But no, it waits until a champion goes out to fight.
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to it, when the fight begins, um, the Scots are forced to do the charge. The English are like, we'll wait as long as we need to wait. And this is what we saw at Crécy, which is yet to happen, right? But this is clearly the same kind of idea. Having taken a strong defensive position, Edward III doesn't want to budge. Come and get me. And at least it appears from the sources, the same rough battle plan is kind of followed here of a strong dismounted center that is going to receive the charge of the enemy, but that enemy has got to come through a hail of missile fire. In this case, all these arrows, longbow. And
Which is interesting to me too, because that appears to have happened, and then that appears to have been happening beforehand. The English, with their long-reaching longbows, are have been hitting at the Scots. Not a lot of damage. Then we get a break. The champions go out to fight. By the way, we know the name of the English lad is he's a knight from Norfolk named Robert Benhale, and he goes out, and we do not have the name of the Scots or his dog, so we'll just call the dog Fred. And but it's almost as if this is an act, because the arrows seem to let up when they have this championship fight, and the arrows go back into it, and this is the time the Scots decide that they can advance or should advance.
yeah. And when they do, this doesn't last long.
No,
This
no,
is not one of those
short that left.
fights. Yeah, this is not Brunenburg. This is not one of those like hours and hours and hours all day things. When this goes, I was gonna say goes south, which I guess they are going south. When they go south,
Yeah,
it goes south, and then they go north. Because it
yeah,
turns into a route.
yeah.
Um, and a route that's worse than it ought to have been.
Yes, yes. I mean, the Scots, after they seem to have made all sorts of good moves, now are dreadful in the
Yeah,
actual combat.
just
I love
awful.
the later Scottish chronicler John Ford in describing this. He calls it a lacra mobili bellum. A very, very sad fight.
It is. It is. It's. You almost want to say comedy of errors, except for all the tragedy of this. Right.
Yeah,
As soon as things start to go bad, the Scots have dismounted. All their horses are in the back. And then they're marching up to take out the English here, marching through this bog that they've got to go off of their high ground down into this boggy area, um, and then up onto the high ground again where the English are. And it is awful trying to go through the bog itself, which of course it is, right? It's a bog, much less doing so while being shot through with longbow. So this is awful. And then trying to crawl up out of that high ground, continuing to get hit. It's not shocking that they start to get pushed back.
yeah,
What
yeah,
what's shocking and horrifying on top of the horror is that back in the Scottish camp, the people there in charge of the horses, recognizing things aren't going well, take the horses.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, this is the one obviously with Crecy and Poitiers and Agincourt, we're going to have the presence of the longbow archery in all of the sources. I think it's almost more cruel descriptions here. I listen to the contemporary sources like Lanarkshire Chronicler, and he says, that the Scots approaching the First Division were so grievously wounded in the face and blinded by the host of English archery, just as they had been formerly at Douai, that they were helpless and quickly began to turn away their faces from the arrow flights and to fall. I mean, just amazing destruction by the longbow on the Scottish troops. And they should have known. They'd faced it at Falkirk. They should have known how destructive these were.
Yeah, it's one of the, again, did they have much of a choice? I don't really know if they did. I know there are kind of armchair quarterback people who say, well, they should withdraw. I don't see it. I think they've got to do
Yeah,
this.
I'm with you on that.
They've got to do it. So they don't have a choice. Could they have possibly won? I don't know how. I mean, it seems
Not
like
after
this.
that.
Yeah, certainly not after that, right? It's one of these fights that has a horrifyingly inevitable feeling to it, and yet they go in because, like, what else can they do? It's awful. But then to have on top of all that misery, that the people in charge of holding on to your getaway vehicle stole it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Stole it. And so you find like, all right, we got to get to the getaway vehicles. Wait, where are the horses?
Where are they? Yeah.
The horses are gone. And so then everybody's on foot, and the English can now mount up,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
English
But
are
they're
running
on foot
down.
in boggy ground. Now you got to imagine how tired the Scots are. They've marched a long, long way. The English have been there. They've marched a long, long way. They may have rested a little bit, but then they get involved in this absolute mishmash. The way I read it, it's doubtful that they even attacked the English at all, that they even got to their lines before they had to turn
But to
around.
get actually into melee,
Yeah,
I don't know how many guys got into melee, but it couldn't have been many, if any. I
there couldn't
mean,
have been many. No. Like the brute. The brute's always very poetic about these sort of things. He says, the author says, and there might be seen many Scotchmen drowned dead down to the ground, their banners broken and hacked to pieces, and many a good hobblegen bathed in blood.
awful, awful. And yeah, when they break and this goes into a rout, they can't hardly get away because they're on foot. Even if they get out of the bog, even if they're on foot, and the English are not. And so the English are able to run these guys down. Just absolute carnage afterwards.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Absolute carnage.
Over quickly,
Over
lots of
quickly.
carnage.
And the English are not taking a lot of prisoners. They're taking some. There's roughly about 100 maybe. I think we might get different numbers on that, but something like that. That were taken prisoner, and Edward has them all executed.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, Edward's not one to take in ransom, not especially with the Scots. I mean, the death rate that is given by the original chroniclers is really high, 35,300 to 60,718 by the
there
Scots.
there weren't that many Scots there, so
There weren't that many Scots there, which is just to say there was a lot.
yes,
And
yes,
I think much more believable is the English death rate, which is said to be under 20, with only one knight and one man at arms killed.
and Douglas dies. Um,
Douglas would die, yeah.
Douglas dies in it. Yeah, isn't there a number? I should have this in front of me. One of the things says there was the Scots knighted like 200 men before the battle, and only five lived.
I'm through, yeah.
Golly.
Yeah, there is something like that. I mean, I can't remember the exact number, but yeah, the Scots do. I mean, Douglas, these men who've probably been very valiant up to this period of time, and then they go into the battle, and well, those are all names that get marked down very quickly as knights, knight for 10 minutes.
Yeah. It's a horrible, horrible event from a Scottish position. Um, Good times had by the English.
Yeah,
Berwick now falls. There's nothing to, prevent that.
yeah. There's nothing to, and Berwick will stay in English hands now for a long time. So it's I think that this battle is often overlooked because of the war in France is going to follow, and Bannockburn that has preceded it. But ultimately, it is almost 33 years before the Scots get another army big enough to go into England and to fight. In this case, this siege of Durham and the Battle of Neville's Cross.
Well, Neville's
That's how
Cross
long.
is no, it's 1346. It's only 13 years away.
Yeah, that's it. Didn't I say 30?
Oh,
I don't count me on math.
maybe I misheard you too. Yeah, it's Neville's Cross, and that and that does not fare better.
No, that does not.
Then
No.
they lost their king. Yeah. Not dead, but has headaches for the rest of his life, given the arrows that went into his head.
Yes,
We'll talk about that one later. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, it is.
This battle is so important, I think, because it also gives confidence to Edward III that now he can go to the continent.
Yeah. Now, he doesn't have to worry so much about I mean, he does worry in the sense that when he goes to France in 1346, he does leave contingency plans. If the Scots come, this is how to respond, and those plans go very well, which is why Neville's Cross goes the way it goes. But yeah, he is now much more free to feel like he doesn't have an urgent enemy in his backfield, which enables him, as you said, to re-engage with what is happening in Gascony, what is happening in Flanders, and of course, as you said, after um, as things get more and more, no, 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 I'm the king, all of France, as it were. So yeah, Halidon Hill. I mean, a really important moment, as you said. Not a happy one
Those Scots.
for Scots.
No.
Um, you don't. There's not like a big Battle of Halidon Hill visitor center.
No, there is a nice little memorial stone and a few, maps drawn on and everything, and you can look down. But no, there's been discussions periodically about what to do with Berwick, and right now it's mostly, well, we'll just keep the Elizabethan walls up, and as you're up there, just, oh, by the way, up there about 100 meters is the monument to the Battle of Halidon Hill, which happened in 1333.
Yeah. So Halidon Hill, good fun. Um, what do you
Half
wish?
by half.
What do you
Good, good
what do you
fun.
wish
Half
we
by.
had, man? What do you wish we had?
Now that's an interesting one because we get English chroniclers from later. We do have some good contemporary English chronicles. I said English chronicles. We get Scottish chroniclers later. It'd be very interesting to read what the Scots were thinking. I'd love to have had a Scottish source for this battle, and at least giving us some indication of what of why it went so wrong, because they have done everything so right up to that point. Or
Yeah.
is it just Edward is just that much of a good general?
Yeah, well, I mean, is it really a good generalship or just, I mean, like he's got the position, right? I mean, um, and it's not necessarily bad generalship on the part of Douglas either. I mean, by the time he gets, should have gotten there faster or something like that. I mean, you could sort of get on that kind of thing maybe, but
Yeah.
but yeah, it is um a fight that once it starts, like I really don't know what options Douglas has.
Well,
Um,
I mean, if I play what if, we've done a couple of times with this battle, I would say to Douglas, get up there, go, sacrifice maybe a couple more guys hanging down in the city, but rest your troops. Rest your troops. Take a look at what the terrain is like and where you can't go, because it wouldn't matter whether the longbow were effective or not. If they're bogged down in those bogs getting to the line, the melee is going to be inconsequential either. So I think that might be, if I'm the the Vegetius on Archibald's shoulder, I say, yeah,
yeah,
rest your troops.
I just think if you do that, Barracks falls.
Yeah,
And if
maybe
Barrack
it's,
falls, like now what do you got? You're now having to do a siege. And
yeah, that's
that's
true. That is true.
that won't
Of
work.
course,
So
he
so I don't
removed
know.
all doubt about that with a very short battle that he loses badly. Barrack falls anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so was he thought his numbers, yeah, I'm gonna lose a bunch of dudes, but we'll crawl over the bodies and knock them out and it'll be okay. I guess that's what he's thinking. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. It's a rough one for sure. Um, so they're closing the bar on us.
Here they are.
As they are wont to do on us as we get to yapping. They're locking the doors. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I hope you'll join us next time because we're going to be doing the Siege of Constantinople in 1453. I don't know. I don't know how we're going to do that in a short amount of time, but we'll try.
Well, may have to. I mean, it's one we could take a little bit longer on, but do a couple. Siege of Constantinople is the siege. There is very little doubt on the decisiveness of that battle. One day Byzantine, next day Ottoman.
Yeah, and it is we saw the movie this summer. The movie version, panoramic movie version of it in Istanbul, Kelly and I. And now I know exactly what happened. Because I saw it in this
We saw the
panorama.
20-minute version. Yeah,
It was great. It was
yeah,
great.
it was pretty good. Because I've been to the walls of Constantinople a number of times, and this was the very first time. It must be a relatively new visitor center.
It is.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Great fun. Great fun. So yes, as ever, a reminder. This podcast is sponsored by medievalist.net. So the best way to support us, other than buying our individual books, of course, is to join their Patreon at patreon.com/medievalists. That's also the absolute best place to drop us a line if you have questions for our next Q&A. Cheers,
Said
everybody.
questions. Said questions.
There you go. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.